Hi, we're in South Central Pennsylvania, and we're in Cumberland County at the third oldest town in Pennsylvania, Carlisle. We are at East South Street and South Bedford Street. We are at Old Graveyard. Old Graveyard is one of the 7 original colonial public graveyards in Pennsylvania. The oldest surviving tombstone here is from 1757, which is 6 years after Carlisle was incorporated, but I'm sure there were most likely burials before that. We're going to show you that tombstone as well as some unusual gravestones. And the graves of some very colorful characters as well as some dastardly ones. So get your gear, let's go exploring. We're at the grave of Thomas Robb, who passed away in 1757. This is the oldest surviving marker in Old Graveyard in Carlisle. Another interesting tombstone belongs to a drummer boy during the Civil War, 14-year-old Charles Siebold. I can't imagine sending your children to war as adults, let alone as a child. We're at the grave of a man who participated not only in the Revolutionary War, but also the Civil War 100 years later. How? Let's check out his grave. This is William Blair. Of course, you can see he was a Revolutionary War soldier from the marker. When the Confederates invaded Carlisle on July 1st, 1863, they shelled the town, and here's evidence of that. Mr. Blair's grave was struck by a shell, and the damage is still there. So the poor man had to be a soldier for the Revolutionary War and then get injured during the Civil War. At the grave of Officer George Martin, who was murdered by Charles Salyers in 1893. George Martin was born in 1866 in Carlisle. He married a local girl, Clara, and they had one infant daughter, Anna. He joined the Carlisle police force in 1890 when he was 23 years old. On Saturday, April 8th, 1893, around 10 p.m., while walking the streets of Carlisle on patrol, Martin observed a man acting in a suspicious manner. Martin knew the man was a burglar and followed him. When the suspect noticed the officer, he started to run. Seeing that the officer was gaining, the suspect slowed, and when his pursuer was within mere feet, he turned quickly and shot the officer through the heart, killing him instantly. The shooting was witnessed by several men who went to Officer Martin's aid, but there was nothing they could do except carry his body home. Officer Martin was 26 years old and had served only 3 years on the job. The outpouring of grief and support from the community was huge. Based on the evidence and witness identification, a known burglar, Charles Salyers, was sought. He changed his appearance by shaving his beard and cutting his hair. He then changed his clothes and hopped a train to Chambersburg. But he was known far and wide by the police and the community, and so was Officer Martin. Excellent police work and community involvement led to Salyards being captured 3 days later in Winchester, Virginia. He was found guilty and hung on March 1st, 1894. It was to be the last public hanging in Cumberland County. The day of his hanging, Salyards awoke at 5 o'clock in the morning, feeling much stronger than he did the evening before, when he was suffering from the effects of a suicide attempt by poisoning. On reaching the scaffold that morning, Sheriff Strock asked the prisoner if he had anything to say. Salyards said, "If any of the Martins are present, I will say that I am innocent." The rope was placed around his neck by Deputy Graham, then the black cap placed over his head, and before the lever was pulled, in a low tone of voice, Salyards said, "I am innocent." The sheriff pulled the lever, and Charles Salyards passed into eternity at 10:38 a.m. He was blessed with a broken neck. After hanging 20 minutes, he was pronounced dead by the jail physician, Dr. Kreis. The body was placed in the hands of Undertaker Malk for burial. Salyards had requested to be hanged without his boots on, and that request was honored. His boots were preserved and are now in the possession of the Cumberland County Historical Society. It's been said his ghost continues to haunt the old Cumberland County prison to this day, continuing to proclaim his innocence. It's also been said that Salyards' suicide attempt by poisoning while imprisoned was supposedly so he would appear more natural in death, as he requested to be laid out for viewing, which he was at Malk's funeral home. The ghoulishly curious were charged a nickel to see Salyards' body, the fee used to secure a decent burial. Salyards, as well as Officer Martin, was buried in Old Graveyard, Salyards in an unmarked grave very close to the alley where he murdered Officer Martin. So you can come give your respects and visit the grave of Officer Martin. The most famous grave in the cemetery belongs to Mary Ludwig Hayes, and she's better known as Molly Pitcher. One monument in Old Graveyard stands head and shoulders above the rest, literally. That is the memorial for Revolutionary War heroine Molly Pitcher. Mary Ludwig Hayes McCauley was one of many wives who followed their soldier husbands' troops during the Revolutionary War. These women would bring pitchers of water to the soldiers to quench their thirst or to cool down cannons. The name Molly was often used as a nickname for Mary or Margaret, which were common names at that time. And the soldiers would frequently yell out, "Molly, pitcher," meaning they required a pitcher of water. The name Molly Pitcher embodied many women on the battlefield. However, our Molly Pitcher, once again, stands out in a crowd. In the summer of 1778, Mary Hayes / Molly Pitcher was 22 years old, pregnant, smoked, chewed tobacco, and cussed like a sailor. Our Molly. That year in June, during the Battle of Monmouth, New Jersey, under substantial enemy fire, her husband John operated a cannon. When he went down due to heat exhaustion, our girl picked up the swab and manned, or should I say womaned, the cannon herself. One soldier recollected the account in his diary, telling how an unfriendly cannonball shot right between Molly's legs, destroying the bottom of her petticoat and skirt, but leaving Molly unscathed and unshaken. Word of Molly's bravery made its way through the ranks, and she received a letter of appreciation from none other than General George Washington. She was issued a U.S. military pension for the rest of her life, and during World War II, she was further honored by having a Liberty ship named after her, the SS Molly Pitcher, which unfortunately was torpedoed in 1943. Molly's likeness can be seen all over town, as Carlisle holds their own in the highest esteem. Mary Ludwig Hayes McCauley, aka Molly Pitcher, continues to be revered for her patriotism, her courage under fire, and general badassery. Cheers, Molly. We're at the grave of Mr. Charlie Falk, Carlisle's original bad boy. Many times arrested, never convicted, and that includes murder. He was also arrested for trying to blow up the sheriff's house twice. He's a character. Have you ever met someone so handsome, so charismatic, so bold, that even though they're a criminal, you actually find yourself cheering for them? Charlie Falk was such a character. Carlisle, St. Patrick's Day, 1853, finds Charlie drinking with friends in the east end of town when they come upon two women who were having a shouting match. As one walked away, the gang of entertainment-thirsty pals encouraged one of them, named Kate Myers, to give chase. She did, and in front of the McManus House / Eagle and Heart Tavern, which, by the way, was built in 1803 and still stands at the corner of Northeast Street and Locust Avenue, the ladies went at each other. Corporal John Barney, on patrol from the nearby post, apparently heard the commotion and attempted to end the quarrel. Charlie Falk drew his revolver and shot him. To his credit, Corporal Barney chased after Falk for several yards before collapsing. He died a few days later. 3, including Falk, were arrested for the murder. The defendants were tried separately. Charlie's trial being first, he was, surprisingly, acquitted. He was called to the stand as a witness for the second offender, and once on the stand, asked the judge if he, Charlie, could ever be tried again for the murder of the soldier. When the judge replied that he could not, Falk admitted to the murder, although claiming self-defense, and revealed that the court system had acquitted the wrong man. For whatever strange reason, this incident made Charlie Falk a hero in many citizens' eyes. He was perceived as clever, charming, the black sheep of an otherwise well-respected family. The women wanted him, and the men wanted to be him. He was arrested several times for murderous assault, which included shooting at the sheriff, and arson, yet, somehow, always managed to elude conviction. He was arrested in 1876 for bombing Sheriff McCartney's home on Bedford Street, and, while free on bail, attempted to bomb it again. Despite there being eyewitnesses seeing Falk and a partner running from the scene, magically, alibis for Charlie appeared, and once again, he was not convicted. The more Charlie escaped justice, the more the townsfolk admired him. Although Sheriff McCartney's housekeeper, Maria, claimed to have been married to Charlie for years, which Charlie denied, he married Carlisle's chief constable's daughter. Guess you actually do have to admire his moxie. When the law began getting tough on arsonists, and Charlie was implicated in an arson ring, he took off for the Wild West. He eventually landed in Hot Springs, Arkansas, where he again won over the townsfolk with his charm and bravado. His luck came to an end in 1884 when he became involved in a murder and was shot and killed by a police officer. His body was sent back to Carlisle and was laid out for viewing at the Ewing Funeral Home. Both Maria and his widow were in attendance. He was buried in Old Graveyard, and although his body lies dormant under 6 feet of earth, his rebellious spirit will always roam the streets of Carlisle.